Hello, amazing teachers. Jay Fulmer here. 2nd Nephi 29 is going to be a great lesson. Let me remind you of what we've talked about in the past, and that is these bolded sections of your lesson are a great place to put a time goal of some kind. Figure out how much time you want to spend in each of these sections. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15, 20, whatever it is. If you plan that out carefully in your lesson, how much time you're going to give yourself in that activity, it will make sure that you don't run out of time. Well, it at least will help a lot to make sure you don't run out of time for the later portions of the lesson, which in many ways are the meat of the lesson. That is absolutely true here. Let me offer a couple of suggestions. Once you get to this second portion, different attitudes to receiving God's word, there will be this section that instructs students to read 2 Nephi 29, 7 through 11. It doesn't seem like a lot of verses, but some of these are really long verses. So make sure you've budgeted your time. If you get to this point in the lesson and you're running short on time, my recommendation is just read verses 7 and 8. Verses 7 and 8 really cover the material in verses 7 through 11. So that's one way you can trim time. Why might you want to trim time? There's an activity here where you watch a video. This is about a man's experience where he was blessed by receiving God's word. Leading up to it, we see questions like, what are some different ways God speaks to his children in all nations? So I'd like to offer an activity instead of this one. Don't get me wrong. The video is fantastic. Your kids will love it. It's a great account. But if you want to introduce your students to a brand new resource, a teacher of mine gave me this suggestion. I think it's wonderful. I'm going to pass it on to you. Again, we're thinking of the things that we learned in 29, 2 Nephi 29, verses 7 through 11, about how God speaks to all nations and people. For examples about that, go into your church history section of your Gospel Library app. When you do, at the bottom, there's this section, Global Histories. My recommendation is, if you want to do this activity, invite your students to come to this section and then spend 5 minutes. That's about the length of that video, and pick an area of the world that they're interested in. So, for example, we might come to Bolivia or Croatia. You could have them pick an area based on a mission they want to go, or that someone they know has gone, or an area of the world they're just interested in. Lots of great stories. And let me give you an example. If you clicked Rwanda, it gives you some information about the area, but then it has stories of faith. In this case, there are 2 stories of faith. Click on one of them and then read about the account. So this is going to take longer than the activity in the lesson, because you'll give the students time to find a story, read the story, but then you'll want to give your students a chance to report to one another what they've found, to summarize briefly the story and how the Lord has touched and spoken to them wherever they are in the world. Our students today, maybe more than any other generation, have such a global perspective on things. Giving students an opportunity to research someplace in the world, hear testimonies of how God has spoken to someone in that part of the world, and then getting to share that together, what a wonderful way to give students that global perspective. But also, you will have taught them how to use this resource in their gospel library so that anytime they want, they can go back to these different places in the world and learn the stories of fellow brothers and sisters and how God has touched their lives. Now, I know that lesson idea is going to take additional time, which is why if you budget your time carefully, you'll still be able to have students reflect on these activities. Make a list of ways God has made his word available to you. Reflect on how willing you are to receive his words, and so forth. These are great activities for them to reflect on what they've learned in their study journals. I told you this is going to be an amazing lesson. May the Lord bless you in your efforts.